Hi, I'm Andy Piazza. This is Hacking Over and Under the Wire, a talk I gave at BSidesNoVA in 2023. Recording it now, I want to be able to push it out there for others that weren't able to attend and be able to cover some of the stuff that had to miss in the actual live talk. So let's get started. The first thing you know, right, let's run down the agenda. I'm going to do a quick introduction to Over the Wire, the war game called Bandit. It is a Linux-based kind of capture the flag style set of challenges. We'll use PuTTY to SSH there, and we'll show you how to get that all set up. Talk through how we solve some of these challenges. Then we'll pivot over to an intro to Under the Wire Sentry, a war game based off of PowerShell. Talk about how we can remote in using PuTTY or remote PowerShell. Talk through how we solve some of those challenges. And then at the end, I'll loop it all back in and show it like we actually do use some of these commands in the real world, right? Or actually many of the commands. This isn't just a fun, kind of capture the flag, but this is some real world practice that you can get. And you can actually learn how to do some basic stuff and actually some really advanced stuff by practicing these things. You just got to figure out how to learn about those commands and then how to apply them to the environment that you're working in and to solve the problems that you're working on. What to expect. This is really, really introduction stuff. When I got started in cybersecurity years ago, I found that like many of the blogs and the walkthroughs I got to just had a basic level or like just skipped over a basic level of understanding, and they'd be like, oh, remote into this or SSH over that. And they never explained how to do that, how to get set up, what SSH was. And so ultimately, that's what I'm trying to cover here. Like I said, I did it at BSidesNoVA this week. It was went fairly well, other than hitting a couple technical challenges. And there was some, group participation, which obviously won't be able to pull off here on a recorded session, but we're going to end up doing some pretty cool live hands-on stuff. So, if you're a pen tester, this is probably not the talk for you, unless you've never seen over the wire and under the wire, and kind of hang out and follow along. But this is really geared towards the idea of getting new people started with tools. Really looking at talking through how we think through the different tools and the challenges presented, and how do we find good information. So with that, quick thing first, we got to get set up for Bandit. Like I said, Bandit is a Linux-based war game available on overthewire.org. We'll connect to it via secure shell or SSH using a tool called PuTTY. So we'll download and install PuTTY. We'll create a text file on your desktop or wherever you want to save a password for each level. I do that in case I fat finger or accidentally copy too much information or the next command and I fail or I lose a connection. I have a list of all the passwords in the order that I completed them, so I can log back into the last level that I was on and not have to start all the way back over at the first level. So we'll get in, we'll connect as Bandit 0, and of course we'll hack the planet. So this should be fun. We're going to do it live, which is always a horrible, terrifying idea, right? So as I mentioned, I create a file on my desktop, bandit.txt, where I'll save all the passwords as I play along. So then as I continue to advance every time to a new level, if I have to copy and paste other stuff, I'm not losing the password that I was on. So first thing we want to do is, like I said, we got to download PuTTY. Always fun as a noob trying to figure out what tool people are talking about and where to get it. So we're going to come here to putty.org. And like with all good free tools, when we click the download button, it takes us to a completely different URL. And if you're noob, it probably scares you. If you're senior and experienced, that also probably scares you. Why did I go to a different website to download things? Unfortunately, that's a little too common when it comes to free tools. But this is trusted. This is the legitimate site. And we're going to download here the 64-bit for Windows. Again, this is one of those where if you're new to the field, you probably have no idea which one to get. You can see I've downloaded multiple versions, but it doesn't really matter. I'll install the most recent. So I just double clicked on it. I'm going to put it in the default folder path under program files. Going to get the default install. I will turn that on and hit install. Yes, give it permissions, because of course in my VM I'm logged in as administrator, otherwise I would have had to put in credentials. Should pop up the README when it's done that was successful. Find it now on my app. Let's go ahead and pin it to our taskbar there so we can find it every time. like I said, you could also save a shortcut to your desktop. So I can close my downloads and close this. So I've got PuTTY. Here in PuTTY, I'm going to put either the host name or the IP address, so either like the domain name or IP address that I'm trying to connect to, what port it is. I will name it here. Do a little cleanup from last time I did. How about that? We'll pretend like this is brand new. So I'm going to put the host name that I want to connect to, the port number it's telling me to connect to in the instructions, and then I can name it. And so we're doing Bandit first. Let's go over to overthewire.org. So we want to play Bandit. I should show you here. There are a bunch of different war games. They're all SSH port related. They're all SSH. They all have a different port assigned to them. We're going to do Bandit first. Once you've maxed out on Bandit, done it a few times, or once you got stuck on there, you can go to a different war game and go practice a different set of commands. The big thing here is read all of this information, and this gives you a lot of tips on how to get started. You don't need to hear my stupid voice or watch a video walkthrough or read a video or read someone else's blog walkthrough. If you actually just read the instructions, it's pretty clear. I will say, make sure that you read all of the instructions. I have hit sticking points a number of times where I'm pounding away on the thing, getting the wrong results, trying to log into the next level, can't figure out why the password is failing. And after too many wasted minutes or hours, I go back and read the prompt, and there was a big hint that I completely skipped over because I went straight to solving the problem. So read the instructions. Most notably in here, I will show you there is a command for manual page, right? For the manual or called man page. Show you how to use that. Use that. Also use help. Most of the tools have commands have help pages as well. And then of course we'll be using Google or Bing or whatever search engine to go looking for help as well. But first, let's get connected to 0. So Bandit level 0. We want to connect to bandit.labs@overthewire.org. So I'm going to put that in as the host name on port 2220. The default port for SSH is 22. They don't have us remoting into that. They probably are using that for themselves to manage their server. So we're going to follow the instructions here and go to 2220. I want to save that session. You see that down here now, save session. So next time I load it, or next time I open PuTTY, if it's not loaded, I'm going to hit load. Here's the other dumb thing that I would often do and sit there and wait and try to figure out why the connection didn't launch. Load just means it's loading the settings in here. You still got to hit open. So if you're sitting there after hitting load and you can't figure out why you didn't get a command prompt yet, it's because you didn't hit open. I've done that too many times. So we're going to log in as Bandit 0. And the password for Bandit 0 is Bandit 0. And for security reasons, you don't get to see what the person's typing in the password field, but that also makes it real fun as you're trying to type some of these longer strings, and you may accidentally have a typo. You'll have no idea. So best of luck there. So if you want, you can read through all these instructions. I'm going to skip over it. Big things here, though, like don't leave an orphan processes running, right? Make sure you're killing commands. Make sure you're exiting sessions properly. And if you're going to do a write-up, don't post spoilers. Fortunately, in this video, there will be a few spoilers. I'm going to actually show the passwords as I go through, but we're not going to go through all the challenges. We'll just go for the first 3 or 4 as we work through it together. So I'm in Bandit, logged in as Bandit 0, and now I want to go from Bandit 0 to Bandit level 1. So that says the password for the next level is stored in a file called README located in the home directory. Use this password to log into Bandit 1 using SSH. Whenever you find a password for a level, use SSH on port 2220 to log into that level and continue the game. So give you a set of commands here that may help solve it, right? So like I said, we can use man for manual pages, ls, and see what the heck this thing is supposed to be. It looks like ls is the name of it. The command is list directory contents. The description here says listing information about the files, the current directory by default, and sorts entries alphabetically if none of that stuff, nor sort is specified. And there's a bunch of different sets of commands here, or command switches as we call them. So if you see this -A, right, that's a command switch that tells the tool that we're using to behave a little bit differently, right? In this case, it's to show all of the entries related to that command, or all the files that are there. All right, so I could keep reading through this, but let's get to playing first. So I hit ls. There's a file called readme there, which is in the prompt, right? The password for the next level is stored in a file called readme, located in the home directory. Use this password to log into Bandit 1. So next thing we want to figure out is, can we read this thing? So let's try just the next command is cd. Oh, that doesn't work because cd space readme says readme, not a directory. Of course, it's not a directory, it's a file. So let's check out what the heck cd was in the first place, figure out why I had that mistake. No manual for cd. So how about cd dash help? And we can see up here, the CDs actually change the shell's working directory, which just means we're going to change folder paths. Well, I don't want to change folder paths since I know right where the file is at and I'm looking at it. So that's the wrong command. So let's check out the next one. Let's check out man cat. So it says here, cat is to concatenate files and print out the standard output. Standard output means it's just going to put it on the screen for us. So essentially this is a way to read files via command line and see it. As you can see, again, there's a number of switches we can add to the commands here to change up what our actual results are, but we're going to keep it simple and do cat readme. And there we go, we get the first password, or the next password I should say, to get from Bandit 0 to Bandit 1. So I'm going to copy it. Like I said, I put it in my file so I don't lose it. I'll save that. And before I go exiting out of this one, I always start the next connection first. That way if I messed up and I grabbed the wrong answer, right, or if I messed up the password in some way, I'm still in the original session and I don't have to go back to it. So we're going to try to log in as Bandit 1. And I'm blindly pasting the password and hoping we log in to Bandit 1. Let's try that again. Whoa. That's the wrong one. Not sure what happened there. All right, there we go. I think what was happening was clicking in there, it's hard to see with passwords since it's blank, but I'll show you here. If I actually right click in a terminal on Linux, in most versions of Linux, it'll actually paste whatever it is saved. So I think I might have been doubling up on the password. So here I am, I'm in Bandit 1. We want to be good stewards and exit out of Bandit 0 because we don't want to just keep processes running on the server. So I just type exit and hit enter. And now I'm at Bandit 1. And so we want to change the level, right, from Bandit 1 to Bandit 2. It says the password for the next level is stored in a file called just dash, located in the home directory. And here's some commands that might help to solve. And there's also some helpful reading material here, a Google search for dash file name, advanced bash scripting guide, chapter 3 for special characters. But first thing I want to do is just hit ls. And I see the dash file name. Usually anytime I log into a new machine, I always hit ls. I just want to see where I'm at and if there's any files or folders. And so let's try cat dash. Nothing's happening. So I'm going to quit that. So I just did, well, for my Windows machine, it's the, or my Mac machine, it's Alt-C. All right, so that didn't work. So let's see if we can see cat dash help, see if it's got any help for us. So there's a dash A for show all, dash B, number of non-blank, number of non-empty output lines, dash E equivalent to VE, which would be, dash V would be show non-printing, and E would be equivalent, what? Oh, capital E, shows the end of each line. So I don't think that's what I need, but let's try the cat dash A dash, see if that works. Nope. Nope, just give me the end of the line now. Let's kill that. Let's go to the internet then, right? So we're kind of stuck. I always hate when it doesn't open a new tab. So come over here, check on the first result, see if there's any information here. Sometimes you can create a file whose name starts with a dash, like output or -f. It's a legal file name. The problem is Unix command options usually start with a dash. So every time I was doing the dash as a file name, it was waiting for a command option, right? It wasn't thinking of it as a file name. So we got to tell Linux that it is the file name and to not treat it as a command. So all we need to do is kind of hide it, right? Or we call it like an escape character, is to start the file name with a period and a /. So let's give that a try. So we can do cat, and we got less again. So do cat. There we go. Now we got a new password, right? So hopefully you can see the process, right? Is that, you know, the whole point of why I'm putting this together is, and recording this is not, you know, to solve these problems or anything cool like that. It's really just to talk through like how we learn and look up different commands, right? You may, you know, think that like, you know, advanced, you know, super Jedi, red teamers or blue teamers know all these commands by heart, but that's usually crap. In reality, almost all of us have cheat sheets. You know, I've got post-it notes on my desk everywhere all of the time. I've got my own personal like Confluence page of wikis, a bunch of commands and stuff that I've learned through my years, right? And little cheat sheets on what they use them for. There's the blue team field manual, red team field manual. I believe there's a Linux field manual. They're literally just books of commands and cheat sheets for how to do different tasks, right? Like pulling up Windows events during forensics, right? Or hashing a file, or finding, searching across a folder structure, looking for specific file names or content. Like most folks, you know, like we memorize 3 or 4 commands that are, you know, most common to us, right? Like ls and cd to look at the files and to move around folder structures. But when we start looking at advanced commands and stuff, most of us have cheat sheets, right? So don't feel bad if you have to go to Google and go look for an answer. As you're working on capture the flags that are, you know, already out and published, like over the wire and stuff, there's also such things as walkthroughs. So if I get stuck on a level, we're going to Bandit 1 walkthrough, we can see there are videos and blogs, and a lot of them, on this capture the flag challenge, right? And so we can dig into one. Some of them will have spoilers, even though the instructions said don't have spoilers. Again, it's a little harder on a video. I'm not going to take the time to edit out password because I'm actually trying to show us how to use them. But other ones won't show you the password, but they'll at least show you how to do it. Here's a good example where this person, instead of using PuTTY, they're just doing it straight from command line. You can do that right from Linux machines, or you can install SSH as a tool, and you do it straight from command line. I usually use PuTTY, and I demo it as Windows because, you know, most folks getting started traditionally are probably going to have Windows before they're comfortable enough to use Linux. But also it's good to see the different tools, right? But so we can do this actually directly from a command line and use the SSH tool itself to make the connection. But as you can see, each one of these walkthroughs gives you help with how to do the different levels. So main point I wanted to cover, right, was like how do we actually think through these challenges, and how do we look up tools like the man pages or help. You can see with the man pages the answers were really robust and there was a whole bunch of options, and with help it was a little more succinct of here's the like kind of the most common or most helpful command switches you might use. So with that, I'm just going to do maybe one more, and we'll pivot over to the under the wire for some PowerShell fun. So I'm going to launch another PuTTY window, and we're going to get connected to Bandit 2. And we are in Bandit 2. Again, almost one of the first things I always do is hit ls, spaces in this file name. That should be interesting. Let me clear this out. And again, I want to gracefully exit, or ungracefully if you want to, and just type exit, right? So now I'm logged in Bandit 2. I see there's either one file or a bunch of files called spaces in this file name. I'm guessing it's, you know, single file since the context of the name, but let's go look at from level 1 to level 2. I'm sorry, level 2 to level 3. The password for the next level is stored in a file called spaces in the file name. Okay, so that is supposed to be one file, right? And it's located in the home directory. So we LS'd it, right? We see where it's at. Let's go ahead and try to cat it. And I get a bunch of cat errors. So what it actually looks like to me is cat, because there's spaces in the file name, is trying to read each one of those words as if it's its own file, right? So cat spaces, cat in, cat this, cat file name, rather than one file. We could try to do man, cat, see if there's any help here. I'm just gonna hit enter to keep loading more pages of the man page. See if there's anything about spaces. I'm not seeing anything. Another trick we can use, I'll show you a tool called grep, which is basically like searching to match a string. Actually, yeah, let's do man grep so I can tell you what the actual name is supposed to be. Oh, it doesn't actually show what the name is other than grep, but it prints the lines that matches patterns, right? So it's a tool that I can use to search for certain words, right? And so what I want to do is I'm going to do man cat, and I could do grep, and I'm looking for spaces in the man pages. So instead of reading the whole man pages, what I've done is I'm pulling up the manual for cat, and then I'm piping it, that's what this character is called, into grep. And so it's taking the results of the man command for cat and pushing it over to grep. So I'm essentially searching grep, searching the man pages for the word spaces. And I don't have a results. Let's confirm that I didn't screw this thing up completely. So we'll do man cat, and this will look funny. We'll grep for the word cat in the man pages for cat. So of course there should be a bunch of them. So right, my commands actually were correct. So the word spaces doesn't exist in man, so that doesn't help us. And when in doubt, we can go to the Googles. Did it again. I want to open a new tab so I'm not losing my page. So spaces are allowed in file names, sure. Let's check out the Linux handbook. That's probably going to be helpful. Just reading through here. Oh, the pop-ups are amazing. So here's an example, right? They're trying to cat a file name with the spaces, doesn't understand that. So it looks like if we wrap the file name in spaces or in quotes, that might actually work, right? So let's give that a try. Spaces, actually put the quotes there. Spaces in this file name, and that appears to work. So I've got the password for the next level. I'm going to copy it out. Actually, I want to show you one other thing I learned while I was preparing for this I hadn't seen before. So you can put the thing in spaces, or I also hit cat and I'll start typing the word spaces. And if I hit tab, it will auto-complete what to which file it thinks I'm trying to pull up. And in this case, instead of putting it in quotes, it actually did a backslash in front of each of the space, which is just another, like it's an escape character. So it's telling the command line to ignore those spaces. So that's a way I can do the same thing as putting it in quotes. I'm just telling it to ignore those spaces by using those things. So again, I just did cat. I knew the file name started with the word spaces. I hit tab and it auto-completed with for me with the backslash to escape those spaces, to tell the computer to ignore those spaces and treat it as a single string. So again, we can keep going. There's a bunch of really cool challenges in here. As we get through Bandit's higher levels, there's some really cool ones where you actually have to start piping commands, a lot more commands together. I can show you. I'll just use this person's walkthrough as an example. Get a little further in here. So you can see, like, looking for users where the username is Bandit7 and they're assigned to the user group Bandit6. And they've got a file size, so we're looking for a file that's owned by user Bandit7, that's from group Bandit6, and the file size is 33C. Sorry, reading this because I'm doing it all as we go, right? So there's a bunch of really cool examples though as these things start to build, right? And so this case, going from level 8 to level 9, we're catting data.txt, we're piping it into the command sort, so that's going to sort it in alphabetical order, and then we're looking for unique entries, and so that'll pull out the one that's unique. So again, I highly encourage everyone, if you're getting started, download Putty, get connected over the wire, start with Bandit. That one's been my favorite so far. I've done a couple of the other ones, and just work through some of the challenges. The biggest thing is using the man pages, using the help, Googling for the commands first, right, and trying to read how the commands work before you go. If you just add the Bandit number and the word walkthrough, you'll find a video or a blog, and it'll help you figure it out. Big thing I want to say though is, I'm going to repeat it probably 1,000 times on this video, is like, don't feel stupid for having to Google commands, and don't feel stupid if you have to Google like a walkthrough. I mean, there are entire, parts of the internet are just dedicated to answering people's questions for everything, right? Go to Stack Overflow, and it's literally, senior developers and junior developers, right, trying to solve problems, or engineers trying to solve problems. Like, everyone goes kind of to the hive mind community of the internet to answer some of these questions. So don't feel like you have imposter syndrome or anything like that because you don't know a command off the top of your head, or it failed and you didn't know the syntax properly. That is quite normal for all of us. Like I said, most of us have cheat sheets because we don't memorize all of these things. So with that, I will pop back over the slides for a sec, give you a quick over the wire recap, right? So again, we use Putty, enables SSH among a bunch of other protocols to remote systems. We can save and load sessions, right? So that the session parameters, that way we don't have to type it in every time. So you can have multiple different sessions if you're preloaded, right? So you're connecting to over the wire, Bandit, or your own machines or other challenges. You don't have to think and remember what host name or IP or ports you're supposed to be connecting to. Let the tool remember for you. Bandit is a Linux-based war game. Just for Bandit, there's 34 levels of progressive difficulty. You start stacking different things you've learned from earlier commands. You start having to pipe them to each other. It gets pretty cool. And of course, Over the Wire has a bunch of other ones. We learned about the man pages and help. Look up command options. And again, those command options are called switches. So like -A, right, for LSL, right, that is the command switch to show everything, even the hidden files. And Google for the win when in doubt. With that, moving over to Under the Wire. So Under the Wire is we're going to use Sentry, but Under the Wire is a series of Windows PowerShell based war games, very similar to Over the Wire, but instead of using Linux and SSH, we'll be SSHing and getting a PowerShell command prompt. And instead of Under the Wire being on .org, it's actually on .tech. So if you can't find it, that is why. I find that almost every time I go to play this, every few years, I lose this damn site because I could look for .org. But it's underthewire.tech. Again, we'll use Putty. I will say Sentry Zero requires access to their Slack channel, but the link's dead. So to cheat, I just went and did the Google Sentry Zero walkthrough with password. Found out that password was Sentry1 or username Sentry1, password is Sentry1. Shocker, right? And then so I just skipped over Sentry Zero. So quick notes on the PowerShell syntax, right? We have commandlets. They're like small little scripts that allow us just you dash separate a verb and a noun convention. So get computer info, we'll get the basic computer info for that machine. There's a bunch of different verb options here, right? So new if you're creating things, or set if you're modifying things. Get is retrieving information or files, right? Read, find, search. There's a whole bunch of different things. And again, we'll do it live here. So let me exit out of that guy. Close this. Exit Under the Wire. Tech. Close these other ones. Gonna go to War Games. Again, there's a bunch of different War Games here. And one we're going to do is called Sentry. Again, Sentry 0 to Sentry 1. We were supposed to go into Slack, but like I said, pretty sure the link is dead. Yep, no longer active, so they need to refresh that. But instead, we get Putty set up. Going to grab the host name. Just copying and pasting it there. They're letting us connect over port 22. I'm going to name the session Sentry. Hopefully spell it right. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to load it. Hit open. Sentry 1 is what we're going to. We're using the password Sentry 1 that we stole from elsewhere on the internet. While that hangs up for a sec, I'm going to pull up my password file. All right, so let's go to the first challenge from level 1 to level 2. The password for Sentry 2 is the build version of the instance of PowerShell get installed on this system. Note that the format is as follows. We want to include all the periods, and we want to be sure to look for the build version and not the PowerShell version. And when I say it's important to read all the notes, this was one of those ones where I pounded away on the wrong answer for like 30 minutes before I went back and read that final note, because I was plugging in the PowerShell version over and over and over again. Interestingly, here on this one, it doesn't give us examples of commands like Bandit did. So we almost essentially go straight to the internet or one of our cheat sheets to look up how we can pull up the build version for PowerShell. So we'll go to the Googles, right? PowerShell build version. And of course, there is a Stack Overflow for somebody asking the question. And so we'll give this one a try. The first answer here. And that does not look anything like the format that I was looking for. I even tried to put this into the period of format like that and put it in as the answer. Banged my head on the wall for 45 minutes because it was the wrong one. And then, of course, I realized that this is the PowerShell version, not the build version. So go back to the interwebs, hunt it around. That's the window one. We don't want OS. We still want PowerShell. Just trust me, I made that mistake too. Let's try this command again. I'm just hitting up on the keyboard. That'll bring me my last command. Let's just see what's in the PS version table. And now we see we actually have the build version here, right? And there's that PS version that we were trying to plug in before. I said I kept getting wrong. That's in the table as well, but the build version is actually down here. So I'm going to copy that, put it in my password save file. I'm going to launch another PuTTY window. I'm going to try to connect to Sentry 2 now with that password we just captured. I found when we're logging in on Sentry, if it hangs, it probably means the password is correct and it's loading the session. If it fails, it usually fails pretty quickly. So if you see it start to hang, that's actually usually a good sign. So again, I'm going to exit. Now I've got my new session to go to Sentry 2. So let's go back to the instructions. Let's go from Sentry 2 to 3. So the password for Sentry 3 is in the name of the built-in commandlet that performs the wget-like function within PowerShell, plus the name of the file on the desktop. So if the name of the commandlet is getWeb and the file on the desktop is named 1234, the password would be getweb1234. Here's another important part. Again, this is where I made a mistake. The password will be lowercase no matter how it appears on the screen, because all of the commands are what you call it camel case, right? So the first letters of each word is capitalized, but when we come to the password, we need to make sure we lowercase them all, right? So again, we can just go straight to the internet. They didn't give us any other commands examples except for this get web, right? But that's not actually what it is. So we're going to go for PowerShell equivalent for wget. Invoke web request. All right. So we know that's part of the password. So we'll throw that in our password file on a new line. And the other challenge was for a file on the desktop named 1234. So here I'm going to try our old trusty ls that we used on Bandit, and it actually works, and I can see the file name for 443. But one thing I want to show you real fast is that, you know, ls is not actually a PowerShell command. It's actually an alias for an actual PowerShell command. So let's do ls-help, I believe it is. That did not work. -h. Oh, come on. Try. Does that work? No. Give me 1 second. Brain stuck. That's what it is. Sorry. Should have known, right? Following the PowerShell's kind of command structure, it's get help ls. And now I can scroll up here to the top, and we can see that ls that we use in Linux is actually an alias for get child item, right? So it gets the files and folders in a file system drive, which sounds a lot like ls. There's a bunch of other command switches here. All right, we call it syntax, but we'll give that a try too. Get child item with no parameters, and we get the same results as we did with ls, right? So the file name is 443, which means the next level's password should be invoke web request 443. If we remember correctly, it's got to be lowercase, so we're not entering the wrong password over and over again like I do. We'll launch another session. We're going to Sentry 3. While that logs in. Yep, I'll go ahead and exit this one. And so now on Sentry 3, we've got a challenge of the password for Sentry 4 is the number of files on the desktop. So let's try get help. Get child item. So scroll up, read some of the syntax options here. So for get child item, we've got a filter. Looks like we can filter on a string. We can look at the attributes of the file and see if it's read only, hidden. I'm looking for some type of count or something along those lines. Didn't see that, so we'll go over to the interwebs, right? And we'll say PowerShell count items or objects, right? So looks like there's a measure object command. Measure object commandlet performs calculations on the property values of objects. You can use measure object to count the objects or count objects with a specified property. So let's just do measure object without anything. Nope, that didn't help. So how about get child item? Let's see what's there. Looks like there's a bunch of things to count. So what if we try piping get child item and we'll pipe it into measure object. Now it looks like there's 123 files. If we did that properly, right? So we got child item, right? Which is, like I said, was equivalent like ls. So it pulled up all the files. And then I passed it to measure object with this pipe. And it looks like the count is 123. Let's just confirm that real fast by logging in to Sentry 4. If I didn't completely mess that up. Since it's hanging, I'm pretty sure it's working. Yep. So we made it into Sentry 4. I'm going to go ahead and exit here and get wrapped up. Again, the point here wasn't to go through all the challenges today. It was to talk about how we think about it. So one of the things I'm going to show you, right, is you go all the way up to Sentry level 15. You get more and more challenges. You start having to pipe things together, having to build on the commands that we learned. But what's most important, right, is learning like the syntax, right, that for PowerShell, that we've got the syntax of, the verb noun convention, that we can, sometimes we have aliases to the Linux commands, but if not, we can always go to Google, or we can get help, right? So get-help and look up the file or the command details. There's a lot of options here. PowerShell is actually a really, really powerful tool. It's used every day by folks, just like the Linux command line is. And with that, I want to pivot over just to show some quick real-world examples, so you don't think I'm completely crazy, right, or that this is a complete waste of our time, to learn and go through some of these kind of capture the flag style challenges. So here's some stuff that I've used in the real world personally, like hunting for suspicious files. So in a case, I was threat hunting in an environment previously. I pulled all the scheduled tasks from all of the endpoints in my environment. So scheduled tasks are just what they sound, right? They're tasks that are pre-scheduled on a computer to run at a certain designated time, or when other type of parameters are met. In this case, when I was hunting, I found this suspicious file. It was actually called 123.bat, and it was in a scheduled task to run at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. on somebody's computer every night, or every morning technically, I guess. I thought that was super suspicious, and I wanted to see what was actually there, and take a look at that actual file, right? And so I was able to use this command, get child item, and then I did -path, and so that's saying look in the specific file path, and then -recur says look in the specific file path and any subfolders. I'm looking for a file with the -file, and then filter, I'm looking for a specific file name or something that matches, right? Because I have the wildcards there. And so I use that to search across the user's machine and find the original file, and actually be able to see the results of it, and actually look at like what kind of commands they were running to make sure that it wasn't actually malicious. So that's, like I said, commonly used for on the forensic side, or what we call DFIR, right? So defense forensics or digital forensics and incident response, DFIR. So we use these types of commands in the real world on the blue side. On the red side or on the blue side, we can also use commands like this, looking for plain text password files. So if you're on the blue team and you're authorized to audit for plain text passwords, I stress authorized to hunt for those audit for those, because once you have a user's plain text password, you're now responsible also for anything that happens with that account, because you have a legitimate complaint, or the user could have a legitimate complaint that you could have logged in as them, right? So when we handle passwords, we have to handle it, especially in plain text, we have to handle them with extreme caution. There's a lot of risk for even the defender when we find these things. But red teams, and bad guys often can use these types of things as well. It's pretty common actually to find plain text passwords on people's desktops, unfortunately. So this, or not just desktops, but personal files anywhere. It's really, really common, unfortunately. But here's a good example just of how to do that, right? So get child item, passing a specific path to the user's folders. We're going to recurse to all the subfolders. And then we select the string, looking for the pattern that says password, right? And so I'll do that as an example here in our actual box. Launch PowerShell on my machine. And so I entered in that command. It ran automatically. That's one of the weird things and fun things about PowerShell and terminal on Linux sometimes. If you hit right click on and whatever's entered, it automatically gets executed too. It's not just pasted there. But so again, I did child item to the path, recurse for it, and it found there's sentry.txt on my desktop. There's one match, or I think it might be line 1, but the password for Sentry is Sentry1. So again, we can open it up and actually confirm that, yeah, that's actually in there. So like I said, blue teamers or red teamers, right? Good guys are attackers, good attackers. They're still really part of blue, let's be honest. That's a whole nother soapbox, right? But we can use commands like this to audit for plain text passwords. Looking for Windows event logs, right? For a USB drive, you're on a forensics case and you think that the user inserted a malicious USB stick, or either with malware, or they did it to exfil data, right? To steal data from the corporation. You could use this event, get win event here, looking in the logs for the event related to USB. We can also check for suspicious running processes and services, right? So there's get service, there's get process, there's a number of commands we can look for things that are running on a machine that shouldn't be running there. We can look for the specific, in this case, we're looking for the status equals running. You can also, look, use commands to kill the process, right? To stop it from executing. Super powerful tools when you're using command lines. A couple of Linux examples before we wrap this up. This first one, the wget, we're pulling a file from a website. So if I want to write a script to do recon against a target and I want to pull down all the PDF files, I could put the specific domain and then like wildcard for the file name and pull down any PDF files from them. There's also some recon tools that are built to do that for you. But if you don't have access to those tools and you're just trying to pull down a single file, like wget is used all of the time in different capture the flags and used in the real world as well by both good guys, bad guys, developers, whatever. You can also this command here, we're viewing the usernames, which is the first field in the file from the etc password file, and pulling out that F1, right? So field 1. This is grabbing a hash of a file. So say we're doing a malware forensics kind of case. We want to I found that suspicious bat while I was doing a hunt. I want to hash pull a copy of the MD5 hash, and I can check it against like VirusTotal or other tools to see if anybody knows anything about it. See if it's already known as malware. This case here, the finding location of an executable, the link D is the name of this executable in this case, related to a suspicious process. So say I ran the command to look at processes on the box, and I see one that is suspicious, and it's running an executable that I'm not familiar with. Then I can use sudo, which is elevating my privileges if I'm allowed to use the find command to enumerate across that / means to recursively search across the folder path I'm in to all subfolders from there. -iname means looking for the name of the file is going to be link D, and the I specifically in front of the iname means case insensitive. So it doesn't matter if it's capitalized or not capitalized, it'll actually match. Otherwise, without that iname, Linux is very specific. Like if you run, if you're searching for cat readme and you type a capital R on your command line, but on the file, real file name doesn't have a capital R, Linux will pretend like it doesn't know that file. So the iname can just either help stupid human error because you don't know the actual spelling or not the spelling, but the capitalization of the file. That'll help you get more realistic results or more accurate results usually. This bottom one is extracting the unique source IPs from a packet capture, right? So TCP dump is a tool that's used to read packet capture files, or PCAP. So in this case, I'm telling TCP dump to read this file, this traffic.pcap. So say it's from a forensics investigation. Then I'm passing it to the tool called cut. The delineator is a space here, pulling out the third field, which I believe is the source IP. In a PCAP though, it's the source IP plus the port number is attached to the end. And so here I'm cutting off or I'm delineating at a period, right, which is going to be in the IP addresses and the port numbers, and I'm pulling just the first 4 fields, which is the first 4 octets of the IP address, and then I'm sorting them so that they're in numerical order, and then I'm pulling out the unique, right? So if there's duplications, I'm just, sorting it down to be just unique ones, and then I'm doing essentially a line count using word count here to tell me how many unique IPs I have there. So again, that's it. In a nutshell, the whole purpose of this was to talk through how we think about solving capture the flag problems and learning tools in the real world. There are a number of resources like Over the Wire and Under the Wire. Like I said, they've got a bunch of different war games. You can also get on Try Hack Me. That platform's got a bunch of amazing free tools, or free boxes, and then the premium accounts are actually really affordable as well. But I highly recommend you just get comfortable with not knowing things and being comfortable with how to search, right? Whether it's using man pages or get help, or actually going to Google or Bing or your favorite search engine and searching for answers. If you find yourself going to the walkthroughs right away, you're not going to learn as much as actually trying to pipe commands together or piece together how to solve the problem. So I'd encourage you to fail a few times before going to the walkthrough, but maybe give every level challenge or challenge level 30 or 40 minutes before doing that, depending on your tolerance for frustration. But yeah, if you find yourself later in some of these games and you're going straight to the walkthroughs every time, then maybe it's time to take a break, type of thing. But you are going to get stuck, you are going to get frustrated, and you are going to need to ask for help, whether that's through Googling or actually asking a friend. So again, this course was intended for beginners getting into the field, but just know that even folks that have been doing this all the time, they still ask for help. And I think that's probably the most important thing. If you only had one takeaway, is that we all get frustrated. We all have to look things up. We all have our cheat sheets. So thanks for watching. If you stuck around for this long, I appreciate it. Have a good one.